It's Thursday, February 9th. Today on the Bro Canadian Newscast,
we're going to be talking about President Bannon. We were wrong, it's not President Trump.
We'll also be talking about Canada's response to the Muslim ban and the Safe Third Country Agreement.
And finally, we'll be talking about the Québec Mosque shooting in local news.
What do we do next?
I'm Bandringer.
I'm Bandringer!
And I'm the Dino Man.
And this is
the Bro Canadian Newscast!
There are two guys with more time than money to spare, discussing local to world affairs. There's Bandringer first with the Dino Man last. Here's the Bro Canadian Newscast.
So, how was your week, Brent?
It's been 2 weeks.
Oh, it's been 2 weeks. I didn't know.
Felt so short. Yeah, I didn't get to the podcast last week. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, it was okay. We had a bit of a veterinary emergency. One of her bunny's paw got split in half. We had to put her into surgery.
And she pulled through?
She pulled through. Everything's fine. She's jumping around now and peeing on things she shouldn't, like usual.
You peeing on things you should? No, because you're a good cat.
That's great. That's great. So, I don't have much more to say about my week. How was your weeks?
It's been pretty restful and lazy, honestly. It's been kind of nuts with the news, so that's where a lot of my focus has actually been.
That's great. Let's get into the news then.
Let's get into the news. So, yeah, we gotta talk about Bannon now.
Yeah, we have to talk about, this guy. So, I started hearing this guy's name, 2-3 years ago even, with the whole Gamergate thing.
Now, for those who don't know, because we probably should go into what Gamergate was.
Yeah, for sure.
Now it's touted as a reactionary movement to gaming journalism, but it really all started off as a smear campaign against some, indie... very indie developer who purportedly slept with people to get good reviews, but then the person she slept with never once talked about her game, and...
At least not in a review capacity.
Not in a review capacity.
At one point, I believe the timeline is before that he was in a relationship with her, talked about her game in a news coverage sense.
Yes. But, yeah, so it ended up looking like just a jilted ex-lover.
It was a jilted
Well, yes, it was.
Sorry. Who made a post that got erased from both the escapist forums and 4chan even.
You're doing something good if you're getting erased from 4chan, that's for sure.
That's great. And then eventually it got out there, and then it was... originally it was 5 guys relating to the 5 guys this woman slept with. And then I believe Adam Baldwin, not related to any of the Baldwins you've heard of, but another...
Yeah, he coined the term on Twitter there.
Yeah, he coined the term on Twitter as Gamergate when linking to a video by some garbage YouTuber that I haven't heard of.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where that whole movement got started. It's been embroiled in sexism,
Rape threats.
Bit of rape threats, yeah, racism a bit.
Yep.
And yeah, it's just not, it's kind of in that whole alt-right community, and it's, if you guys don't know, Milo,
yep,
one of the main spearheaders of the Trump movement, is actually heavy in the Gamergate movement.
Exactly, and Steve Bannon's site, and he doesn't run it anymore, Breitbart, was fairly involved in that. And it's related to the Trump movement, both because it is anti-feminist, somewhat racist, but also because the tone of Gamergate was also this anti-journalistic elites with their new weird art games that aren't really games, and putting females and people of color in our games forcing us to not be able to kill prostitutes in GTA or whatever,
Yeah, that's kind of where this all comes from. So, Steve Bannon, that's what Breitbart. Now, granted, he did do some things before Breitbart. He didn't just make all his money in Breitbart. In fact, he made a lot of it investment banking and in Hollywood, actually.
Yeah, he started out as an investment banker in Goldman Sachs. In the 90s, he went to Hollywood, became a film and television producer.
A brief stint of working in the environmental industry, actually, in between those.
Yeah, but spent a lot of time doing film production. Some films, for the one starring Sean Penn, he got involved with the production of Seinfeld and gets a bunch of royalties and money from that. Yay.
But he hates Jews.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that. And so then he got into directing some documentary films about kind of a heliography of Ronald Reagan, where he met actually Breitbart, the founder of Breitbart, directed a bunch of documentary films. The kinds of things that
it started off with a pro-Reagan one, which, I mean, it doesn't really... I wouldn't say is too controversial, I guess would be the best term. But then got into things where it's talking about, problems with America and bringing back the conservatives and anti-Occupy and,
Well, and then most recently it's been about the Clinton fortune and...
Yeah.
Just like
there was one with with one of the Duck Dynasty guys.
Yeah, it made a
torchbearer.
That's great. It's good to know. So that's what he's been doing. And then in the middle of the Trump campaign, he took over running the Trump campaign.
As campaign manager.
As campaign manager. The Trump campaign had several complete reshuffles. First, Corey Lewandowski was his campaign manager. He got in trouble with the law for grabbing a reporter. Then Paul Manafort was the campaign manager. He then got some stuff leaked that he may have been heavily involved in furthering pro-Russia influence in Ukraine. And also, Paul Manafort has not been involved in American electoral politics for a long time. He's been spending most of his time lobbying for dictators.
Yay.
So that he kind of got shuffled out, and then Steve Bannon and Kellyanne Conway got in. Kellyanne Conway is now all over the American news
saying some lovely things.
Saying lots of alternative
she's the one,
facts.
Yeah, she's the one behind alternative facts, as well as, what was the more recent one?
Referencing the Bowling Green Massacre.
Right, Bowling Green Massacre.
Which just is not a thing that actually ever happened.
There was a story potentially of two guys with weapons that were considering attacking somebody in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Yes.
And they got blown out to a massacre. But bear in mind that even if they were going to do something, the police force caught them, so things worked as intended.
Yeah. So
we get to now. So his official position now is chief of staff.
No, he's not chief of staff. Reince Priebus is chief of staff. He's an advisor.
It's his advisor, right? No, it's the made up quote for this year position, right?
And he's a lead advisor in the Trump White House.
Yeah.
He was actually, the reason this gets confused is that he was announced to a position at the same time as Reince Priebus, chief of staff. That's why I've even seen on actual news sites that he was put as chief of staff.
Yeah, maybe that's where I was getting.
No, I've seen that on on website. That is a mistake.
Okay.
See, Reince Priebus.
Yeah, okay.
We'll edit some of that out, I'm sure. So, chief advisor, or lead advisor, in the Trump White House, rewarded for his great work on the campaign. He is, let's just say some things in his own words. This is a great quote. Why don't I just write it?
Yeah, just read the quote straight up.
Darkness is good. Dick Cheney. Darth Vader. Satan. That's power. It only helps us when they get it wrong. when we're blind to who we are and what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, that just kind of says it, that the views that he has is so distorted based off of what is good, literally.
He has compared himself to Lenin. He says he wants to smash the state.
Yeah, he got compared to a Nazi propaganda.
Yeah, that was actually Breitbart, who compared him to a Nazi propagandist and meant it as a compliment.
And he took it as a compliment.
Yes.
We understand.
A bit about his personal life. He was involved in a couple fairly messy divorce hearings where he was
accused and charged of domestic abuse. But it was later dropped when his second wife didn't show up. But
and then during one divorce,
the same divorce.
Yeah, his ex-wife stated that Bannon had made some remarks about the choice of schools, saying that he did not want to send his children to a specific school because there were too many Jews, and that Jews raised their children to be whiny brats.
Yep. So, not exactly a lovely person in my estimation. But, I mean, and now, so the reason his name's popped up more recently is probably due to one executive order that was signed back at the end of January, where it was said that he was going to be placed on the National Security Council as a permanent fixture, and then two people who were usually permanent fixtures on that council.
Yes.
One of which was the
chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
That's actually the head of all the armed forces of the Americas.
And then the
Director of National Intelligence.
National Intelligence, right.
Kind of a lead position, kind of overseeing all of the intelligence and agencies.
Yes. So these two characters would be brought on as needed. So he has his former fully political advisor, although still very much a political advisor.
Yeah.
In a meeting where he's just making decisions on behalf of the country where politics really shouldn't play into it.
Yeah, these are national security issues. These are how are we going to respond to this threat, that threat. North Korea did something. What are we going to respond with? How are we going to... We got a report saying that Iran is ramping up its nuclear program again. What are we going to do? Oh, the ISIS is doing this. Previous presidents, both George W. Bush and Barack Obama, had a firm separation between political advisors and these types of meetings because these are not things that you need to be thinking about in political terms. These are things that you need to be thinking about in terms of what is best for the country.
Yeah. National security for everyone. So yeah, that's where it comes in. But I mean, then after this, it's come out that he likely had a big role in the Muslim ban.
Yeah, him and Jeff Sessions were probably the main spearheaders, and also the spearheaders on how it came out, which was very chaotic. They did not notify Congress. The Director of Homeland Security, whose department it was that was going to enact this policy, did not learn about it until essentially it happened. So he had no opportunity to talk with how it was done. Because of this lack of consultation, that's why visa holders and green card holders got barred from the country. Because there was no notice for anyone, that's why people that were, on planes when the executive order got signed, got to the airport, and then learned that, no, you can't come in now because Trump signed an order.
Yeah. And he's now claimed that this has all been mass confusion based off of the airports and misinterpreting his orders. I mean, his, nice little guitar sting there.
Yeah, that was great.
He's also, mentioned that, cause the green card holders have now been allowed back in. If you aren't aware, that has been changed.
Well, in fact, the whole travel ban has been held up in the courts.
Oh yeah. There's a judge in Seattle that's pushing against it, and there's going to be continual pressure until something finally breaks.
Well, so just to have more clarity on what stage it is in the courts, there was a temporary restraining order or
immediately by a judge
a judge in Seattle. And now the Trump administration is filing appeal to that order, and that appeal is before the courts as we speak.
Yeah.
And whichever way that it goes, there is a strong possibility that this will go to the Supreme Court, which is rather interesting given the fact that the Supreme Court currently has only 8 members, and that the 9th member is in the process of being nominated and confirmed.
Yeah. So that makes it incredibly incredibly interesting. That the green card holders. It was also thought that Bannon was one of the ones who pushed for it. There's stories of him actually telling somebody who, like, "Oh, we got to put this in," and the person responding, "No, we can't. Trump is the only one that can tell me to do this."
Yeah.
So you have it's you could argue it's hearsay, but it's definitely pushes the idea that Bannon is kind of overreaching his official power. I mean, he was likely behind even the whole executive order to put him on the National Security Council, which Trump has later stated that he didn't fully read and wasn't aware what he was signing, which is a great thing to put confidence in your world leader, right?
Yeah, exactly. In an interview fairly recently, Steve Bannon was like, "We got to keep our good people here," and made a comment that like half or 3/4 of Silicon Valley CEOs are Asian, which is a ridiculous overstatement. Overstatement by like double to triple.
Yeah.
Or more. He describes himself not as a, fascist, but, or a white supremacist, but as a, quote, economic nationalist. But it's fairly clear that he is in league with and pushing a white nationalist agenda.
Yeah.
Richard or Robert?
It's Richard, I believe.
Okay. Of the National Review Institute or whatever.
He's a known white nationalist, like unashamedly.
Unashamedly, he had a talk right around the time of the election where he was like, "Hail Trump, hail our people." This guy wrote for Breitbart.
Like these are the type of people that Trump has surrounded himself with. Bannon is probably the most egregious example, and the one with the most power. Mm-hmm. However, there are plenty of these people that he has surrounded himself with.
Michael Flynn has been known to tweet inflammatory, race-baiting, and completely false articles. Michael Bannon's son, who served as Michael Flynn's son, who served as Michael Flynn's chief of staff, tweeted stuff about the insane child smuggling Pizzagate conspiracy.
Mm-hmm. Which, no basis.
Yeah, it is insane. I wanted to just talk a little bit about another immigration order that he did to, quote, get rid of criminal illegal immigrants.
This is who we're talking about.
Trump. Executive order to get rid of
just to clarify
criminal illegal immigrants. Like just recently, a woman who left Mexico when she was 14 has been here for 20 some years, has gotten deported. She a few years ago got charged with using a false social security number. She has then complied with everything the courts have asked of her. She has a family, and she was deported. There was a huge protest. A man put himself in the wheel well of the van to try to stop it. But eventually the man was removed and they arrested the protesters. And she was separated from her teenage children and sent to Mexico. A place that she has not been since she was 14.
Yeah. She spent her entire adult life here and the majority of her life here.
The U.S. is refusing refugees. People that, if sent back to where they came from, will just die.
Yeah.
This is a moral outrage. People were talking about this being especially relevant because as this was happening, we had Holocaust Remembrance Day.
And during that, then, I mean, this is a bit of an aside, but the Trump speech there, he started talking about how he was being misrepresented and whatnot. And if you actually read a transcript of his speech, almost nothing is talking about the horrific nature of the Holocaust. He was just playing himself up as a victim for the majority of that speech, which is horrific to think about.
And in the official statement from the White House of the Holocaust Remembrance, it did not mention the Jews.
I mean, Yeah, like they officially said, oh, we're mentioning all people because more than just Jews died, but the vast majority.
You cannot ignore.
Yeah.
Like time you mention the Holocaust, you have to mention that it was specifically targeting the Jews.
Yeah. You can mention it targeted gypsies and other people as well. That's all well and good, but you can't just ignore the Jews.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in 1940, a bunch of people on a ship wanted to come into America, a bunch of Jews wanted to come into America to flee the persecution of the Nazis.
Which, if they turned back, they would have been killed.
And the U.S. turned them back.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them died.
Yep.
So, now we're just doing it again. Mm-hmm. I think that's about all we have to say.
It segues actually into kind of our next topic.
Yep. All right.
So, on to national news. So, national news, we're going to be talking about the Safe Third Country Agreement primarily. We'll be talking about kind of Canada's response to this, the Muslim ban that happened, but primarily this is going to be with regards to this. Now, let's first start off and talk about what the Safe Third Country Agreement is. So, in very short terms, it's basically the idea that if somebody is a refugee, Canada would hold that America is a safe place to be, and so that if they were trying to travel and they got to America, and then they decided, oh wait, no, I want to go to Canada, we would send them back to America because America is a good enough country to be in.
Yeah.
But the problem is, with this new executive order, where literally all refugees have been stopped from...
literally all refugees.
Yeah. Any refugee arriving in America is not in a safe third country. So it's being pushed primarily by the NDP, the federal NDP here in Canada, that we should rescind this.
So because of this situation, you have had a surge of refugees crossing the border, mostly in Manitoba. There's been more and more attention paid to it. A while ago, a Ghanaian family lost fingers from frostbite of trying to cross the border from America into Canada because they felt, and I feel like
it's a legitimate feeling for sure,
that America is not going to be a safe place. That if they stay in America, they will be deported to who knows where.
Yeah.
Where they would not be safe. What is a bit problematic, in my opinion, is that Justin Trudeau, after the Muslim ban, or the territory ban of the 7 Muslim majority countries got announced, he made a Twitter statement that refugees fleeing war, Canada will welcome you no matter what your religion. But in actual action, not words, no changes have been made.
Yeah.
Not only have we not changed the Safe Third Country Agreement, this was a while back, but private sponsorships have been capped.
Yeah.
If whatever organization or people...
Well, the Premier of Alberta literally posted, said a statement that said, Alberta is willing to take more refugees if the Prime Minister lets us take more refugees.
Yeah, exactly. We had a rush to bring much more refugees when the Trudeau government came into power.
Because it looked good for the new government.
Exactly. But now, private sponsorships have been capped, and with this, the refugee crisis, worldwide refugee crisis is only increasing in scope, and with the U.S. not taking any more, that means there's more refugees that need a place to live.
Yeah.
And Canada is not increasing the amount that they are sponsoring. And, again, if private organizations, which there are many private organizations that want to sponsor refugees, but they are not able to. Because we have stopped and capped them.
Now, one of the common arguments against increasing the cap or making these things are, now I've heard kind of two of them. One is that the countries immediately surrounding Syria and the affected areas should just take more refugees. And they are taking some. And the other argument that's very common is that, European countries and others should take more refugees given the closeness as well as the fact that, they are more developed countries. Although I don't disagree that I think more countries should take more refugees. I think using it as an argument to basically negate your responsibility to another human being, it's a moot point. Yes, Saudi Arabia should take more refugees. Hands down, they should. But they're not. And you can't, they're their sovereign entity. You cannot force them to take more refugees. But you can take more refugees in and of yourself. And it's the old childhood argument about, like, you punched your sister. Well, they punched me first. Does that make it okay? No. It's still something wrong. And we should still be taking refugees if we can.
It reminds me so much of when people talk about the carbon tax in Alberta.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it's not going to make a difference. And look at China and look at what how much they're polluting. And look at the Americas not going to have a carbon tax. Why should we have a carbon tax? That is the attitude that you should live and your country should behave so that if everyone behaved the way you or your country behaved, then the world would be a functional place.
Yeah, like have your country act as you wish other countries to act. This might be a little rephrasing of a passage I know from somewhere.
Yeah, like, don't offload your own responsibility. Here's another thing. If you look at the demographics of Canada, and of the demographics of a lot of Western nations, it's distorted where we have a lot of an aging population.
Yeah.
And that will cause a huge problem for us long term because we're going to have to spend more money on healthcare. You have more people collecting pensions, more people collecting Social Security, and less people that are young.
Fewer, yeah.
Thanks for the grammatical.
Hey, it's one of the few I'll catch.
All right.
I don't care for.
You have fewer people that are younger paying in to the system and let more people older taking out because of just the realities of healthcare needs, Social Security needs. And immigration is what is increasing our population.
Yes, our population by just domestic levels does not increase.
Yes.
It only increases due to that plus immigration.
Yes. If we did not have immigrants, our population would dwindle and our country would become economically unfeasible because we would not have enough young people to support the aging population. And getting lots of refugee families, getting lots of refugees is something that will help us economically long term. When people look at immigration, when the economics look at immigration, they find that immigrants are very productive, more productive in general.
A lot of them, now they usually tout the idea that, what is it, within 6 months, within a year, like 50% have jobs, and it's like only 50. It's like, you're coming to a country where you might not even know the language. These are, by and large, very industrious people. Like, they're coming not because, I want a handout or I want to lounge on all the Social Security that Canada has. It's more, they want another place to live productive lives.
They are very grateful to be here.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if you let in 50,000 people, a few of them will be terrible people.
Yeah, you will get some bad apples. I mean, there are stories about that, and you just have to look at the Rebel or something to hear those stories, because those are the ones they like to cherry pick out, just like, from my perspective, an anti-evolutionist loves to cherry pick the few scenarios like where a fossil has been faked or where this looks like sketchy, because even though those are by and large not the majority and have been solved, those are the issues that you can point at and get a lot of people to rally behind you because you cherry pick the facts. And it's the same thing. Yeah, you take in a whole bunch of immigrants. I mean, you're going to end up with some that are bad apples. That's just how it is.
I mean, when we've taken refugees before, we have seen them integrate into society, be very productive. My hometown in Tofield had a Lebanese mayor for like 3 terms. He's a pillar of the community. He owns a local Uncle Roger's pizza joint. Like, it serves food at in a restaurant. Him and his family are pillars of the community. When I was working at Bentley, I had a coworker, very hardworking coworker, whose family came from Lebanon during the Lebanese Civil War. The Lebanese Civil War, I don't remember the time frame, but we took a lot of refugees from there. And, I have personal experience with these people. Nabil, the mayor of my hometown, went to our church's 25th anniversary event He's obviously not spreading an Sharia law Islamic state agenda. He's just a politician.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you can hate him for that, but hate him because he's a politician. No, it's 100% true, and that's why, like, I am personally in favor of Canada taking more refugees, and I do agree. Now, granted, I don't know, there is still a refugee process, and I think people coming here from America need to follow the process to what it is. But I think that there are, in some cases, people can feel unsafe in America. But by and large, my heart's more towards people who are trying to get to America and then are unable to even settle there. Mm-hmm. You read Justin Trudeau's tweet, and if it's not just honeyed words, that's what he should be meaning, is that if you come to America and you're rejected, we'll take you. Exactly. And you should, to me, that's not, he doesn't say it as a promise, but that I would hold that almost as such.
Yeah. And, if he's not going to rescind the safe third country agreement because he feels that might cause too much diplomatic fallout with the states, then he should take away the cap on private sponsorship. Yeah. He should increase the amount of refugees we are taking in. Mm-hmm. He should do something.
Yeah. Private sponsorship, by the way, that's when people pay money to bring somebody over. So it's not exactly like a burden on the taxpayer, really. No. It's all been sponsored by private people. So this is just Canadians' generosity living out. Yeah. So you're literally just preventing people from being generous. You're not costing hardly anything.
Very often it's church organizations, local
community groups,
local community groups saying we want to bring refugees over and we will pay for it.
And it's also probably one of the better ways of bringing refugees over, because when they get there, they have a group of people around them who are going to try to help them get settled and get employment and all that sort of jazz too.
Networking. Yeah. Exactly. So I think that's about all we have to say about this particular issue.
I agree. I can't think of anything else to add, and I think the idea of, being open to other cultures kind of segues nicely into, well, not us local news, but local somewhere.
On January 29th, an armed gunman went into a mosque in Quebec City, killing 6 people and wounding 19. The first report came out that 2 were involved, but then it turned out that one of them was simply a witness and was arrested, detained, mistakenly, and that it was a lone gunman. Alexandra Bissonnette. You want to continue?
Yeah. So yeah, as the story goes, it was during prayer time, and he walked in to a busy mosque, and it did, by the way, if you can't tell by the name, Alexandre Bissonnette, he's a French-Canadian white guy, and he went to the local university, that's where he was, but he walked in, and he opened fire, and there's a bunch of people wounded, but there's been profiles put up for the 6 killed people, and I myself, feel very strongly against emphasizing the killer, although in this case I think we want to talk a little bit about his rationale, and perhaps, because we don't know yet, and other things, but I'd like to take a moment and just talk about the different victims, not to weigh too heavy, but there are some people whose lives I think should be actually memorialized a bit.
Okay.
So, first of the victims that usually gets talked about is Azzedine Soufiane, and he's a grocer or butcher. He owned a store that a lot of actually immigrants showed up at because he served halal food, and he was very open to introducing new people to Canada. He was part of that warm kind of introduction that these people would have. He was known by everybody. He was loved. Honestly, he was only, 57 years old when he died. He still had a fair bit of life in front of him, and he was also known to be incredibly tolerant. And it's actually told that he actually tried to rush the gunman now, we think, when the gunman was in the mosque. He basically laid down his life for his fellow human beings, or in an attempt to save them. And who knows, he quite well possibly could have done something to stall the attack. Yeah, he lived in Quebec for 30 years. He was incredibly generous, and he worked and lived right near the mosque. Another one is Khaled Belkacemi, He was only he was 60 years old, and he was a professor at the university, and came from Algeria to escape horrors over there to live in Canada. And it's a real shame that he ended up dying due to probably similar horrors he was trying to leave. He was described as kind and gentle, and he was a scientist at the university. He was a renowned, really well-respected mind, and there was a huge loss in him. Then we also have to talk about Abu Bakr Tabdi, and he was 44 years old, and he's a family man. He had kids. He was a father. He was trying to get by, and he was cut down, and his wife and his kids have been left without a father, and only 44 years old to him. We've got Abdelkarim Hassan, 41 years old, another father of 3. And he was, his friend actually saw him die in the mosque itself. And he was working with IT with the government, like government public service employee, like a regular average Joe. That's kind of what I got from all these, is it was a very mix of people, but they were just regular people. Like, you can't deny that.
And then 2 cousins
were killed because, there was, Mamadou Barry and, they both came from where was it? From Africa, and they came from Guinea, and they were there. The one, he left behind two boys, and then his cousin also came from Guinea, and they were both just devout men, but did not deserve it at all. So
all these people were victims of a radicalized man.
Yeah.
A man who told a friend on Facebook that he was concerned about the marginalization of white people.
Mm-hmm.
This is rhetoric that we have seen way too much of.
Yeah. And by the way, it is an act of terror, because if you don't know, there's a few stipulations for something to be called an act of terror.
Yeah.
One of which is it has to target civilians, which this does.
Yep.
It has to be a significantly large event, right? Yep. It can't just be like, oh, you shoot one other person. This was like 25 about over 25 people affected by this, like directly injured or killed. It has to be across some sort of racial boundary or something, and idealized was the kind of last...
Ideological?
Ideological, that's the word. And so, the last thing some people have yet to determine if it is ideological, but it almost assuredly is, given the target and who did it.
Well, and
what he said around stuff, and...
There was a conservative group, a leader of a conservative group, that said that this man was a part of the group for a while, but he did not fit in because he had views that were racist. This is the guy, did the right thing. As soon as he heard the guy's name, he called into the authorities to share that he had known him, and that he had shared racist views that almost assuredly contributed to this attack.
Yeah. So, thereby, it holds everything. It is an act of terrorism. I mean, Trudeau, maybe I disagree with some of his actions, but he was very right in calling it that from the get-go. Because that's what it was.
Yep. And this ideology of Islamophobia, of white supremacists, of white paranoia at being marginalized by the incoming horde.
Yeah. But I mean, Canada is especially troublesome with this, because if you look at the demographics, Canada isn't just like, oh, the majority of it is white. It's the vast majority. I think it's probably close to 75-80%.
Yes. This is everywhere. You see it everywhere. I was standing in line in the post office, and in front of me was this woman who was very angry at the post office worker because she had to pay some money to transfer some money somewhere, And she hadn't transferred enough money on the first transaction, and then...
So 2 service charges.
Yeah, she was mad about getting 2 service problem. And the people in line behind us were very much rolling their eyes because she was very aggressive. But she eventually got her way because she was, squeaky wheel and all that.
As an aside, if ever you work with someone in customer service, if you're enough of a bitch or enough of a pain in the butt, you will just get your way because they just want to get rid of you.
Exactly. So there was, a line forming behind because this woman was taking some time, and she was seemingly of some sort of a Middle Eastern descent. I don't know where she was from.
Mm-hmm.
And this man behind me in line was commenting about, these people coming over think that they can just change our rules. And soon we're all going to be bowing to Islam, except for me. And I made some comments to him saying that look at the demographic. If you look at the demographics and projected demographics, people think that 30% of people in 20, 50 years are going to be Muslim. That number is going to be 10% at highest.
Yeah. And to counteract the other part of that thing, the idea that these people coming over, Edmonton's actually, I believe Fort Edmonton's home to the oldest mosque in Canada. Like, people of Muslim faith have been in Canada for ages.
Exactly.
It's not exactly like a new development to come have Muslim people over here. There are people here who have been generations upon generations of Muslims in Canada. It's nothing new.
Exactly. Then he cited a report of Syrian refugees sexually assaulting girls at dances, which I later learned from the Candleland podcast, which is an excellent podcast that people should be listening to. That was a report done by the Rebel based on a single source of which I'm going to be clear. I have fairly little doubt that a Syrian refugee did sexually assault a girl at a dance in New Brunswick, as the report says. And that the girl's mother talked to the Rebel, and the Rebel, of course, amplified it, said that, quote, other events happened. This was based on absolutely no reporting. Mm-hmm. As well, if you look at the reporting of it, it's sloppy. It's sloppy in that anytime you talk about a criminal allegation, you always have to use the word alleged.
Yeah.
And in the videos that Faith Goldie, what is her name? The lady who did this report for the Rebel, did it. She says alleged once, maybe at the end, but she keeps inserting that it happened.
Yeah.
That is borderline criminal, criminal actions on the part of journalists. That's why does not follow any journalistic standards.
Well, and we should probably come here quickly and say, just in case people don't know who the Rebel are. Yeah, although if you're in Canada, you'd likely know. But the Rebel, they call themselves a news organization. They've endeavored to get news credentials and whatnot. It's led by Rebel Commander, Ezra Levant.
Rebel Commander, Ezra Levant.
And it has a host of other journalists. You can't see my air quotes. Working with him. But the idea is that he's rebelling against the mainstream media and how they distort and pervert the facts. And he's saying it like it is. Basically all the stories are very right-leaning, are incredibly biased in terms of what they cover and what they do not cover, as well as a lot of these are very much written like opinion pieces instead of actual news articles, and are based off of very little or sometimes outright fabrications in some cases. This is like what we're dealing with, and they actually had a response to the Quebec terror, as they called it.
Yeah, as soon as it happened, they got the QuebecTerror.com website to be on top of this, and sent, Faith Goldie, I believe, was on the ground in Quebec City, talking to people on the scene. As soon as it was revealed that there was only one shooter, and that shooter was a white person, a white man, the Rebel kept on keeping on, just asking the questions.
Yeah.
Trying to cast doubt on the truth
Yeah. Their website literally says, what's going on here? What are the facts? And can we trust the mainstream media to tell us the truth about such a controversial and sensitive subject? And there have been suggestions by this group that the one guy, Mohammed Kadir, is a witness and completely innocent, might not be the case. And this is what they're pushing for. Their website, I found it interesting when they said, that night police took in custody 2 men, Alexandra Bissonnette, blank, and Mohammed Kadir, a Muslim man. Like, this is the type of emphasis they're putting on things. And although, no, that's not true. He was a guy praying in a mosque. He's Muslim. Mm-hmm. But they emphasize one and don't emphasize the other in terms of who they are and just what persons they are. Because, I mean, just like it was said by Spicer, the attack...
Sean Spicer, the press secretary for
Trump. This attack was actually used as a way of reinforcing the necessity of the Muslim ban. When in fact, this was some natural-born Canadian from generations doing this against people who were partially, like, this mosque was filled with some immigrants, for sure. It was the exact inverse.
Yes, and one could definitely argue that the Trump ban was a factor in the radicalization of this man.
That and, like, Kelly Leach's rhetoric.
Well, you can go through the history of Islamophobia in Canada. You talk about the Quebec Charter of Values, where they were very much questioning if headscarves were according to the national values of Quebec, because Quebec is kind of a nation.
Yeah. It's a Canada thing.
It's a very Canada.
We have a few nations in this nation of ours.
Exactly. And then in the most recent election, you had the ban on the niqab during citizenship ceremonies.
Which would have really only affected, 1 or 2 people?
Exactly.
But the large force behind that was Québécois.
Was Québécois. In addition to the niqab ban, you had the barbaric practices hotline. Yeah. These very much are things that both played into the Islamophobia that was held by some people and amplified it. It's a self-feeding cycle.
Yep.
People do things for the Islamophobic demographic, and those things also amplify their Islamophobia.
And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to go through all the people, although it was a little long in the beginning, is because each of these guys, they were family men, everyman, like guys working in IT and in the university and owning a grocery store, people that help their neighbors and like love their kids. This is not a group of people who are coming here and expecting to die in 5 weeks because they're going to some sort of, militant training camp. These are people who have lived here for ages and are just everyday people that just happen to have a different faith.
Yep. So, like, this is just getting everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't consider myself a very political person 2 years ago.
No.
I did not think that politics or anything would go into this kind of direction. But the fact is that, well, yes, 2-3 years ago I was looking at the Gamergate stuff and all the hate.
Mm-hmm.
I just keep coming back to it because it's surreal for me to see the same names and the same terms and the same tactics from this small, little, ridiculous scandal about
not even a scandal.
Thing about a tiny text. Was it a text adventure about depression?
It wasn't a text adventure, but it was a very graphic, minimalist adventure about depression. Yeah, it was an exploration of what depression feels like in a sort of bare bones graphical form.
Exactly.
With no like characters or anything.
And it was free, wasn't it?
I believe it was free.
I'm pretty sure it was free. I did not expect that a movement that grew from that. I mean, it's not the only factor, obviously. There's many factors behind the rise of Trump and the rise of these racist ideologies. But now we're here.
Yeah.
Now we're at a place where a campaign manager of someone who Kelly Leach, a person who wants to be the leader of the mainstream Conservative Party, and a campaign manager that worked on the campaigns of Rob Ford, former controversial mayor of Toronto, and John Tory, current mayor of Toronto.
Yeah.
He stepped down as his role of campaign manager because he was calling someone on Twitter a cuck. And for those who don't know, and I envy you so much, cuck is a slurred...
it's a shortening of cuckold.
Yes.
Which is the term, if you don't know, for a man who either enjoys having his wife sleep with other men or has been found, having his wife sleep with other men. It's supposed to be very demeaning. And the funny thing is, it's demeaning to the people who use the word, but to other people might not even see it as such because it's demeaning to people who have the hyper-masculine idea of, you own your woman.
Exactly. And so this is a slur that's thrown out by these alt-right people that read Breitbart all the time.
Mm-hmm.
At first, it was generally thrown at conservatives that weren't quote-unquote true conservatives because they weren't racist enough.
Yeah.
And it's here. It's
in Canada.
It's in Canadian politics.
It's in Canadian politics. It's right on our doorstep in America. It's got its own news stations. I mean, Rebel, I wouldn't go right out and call it fully alt-right, but it definitely has a following that would agree with alt-right.
Where did we see a news organization founded on distrust of mainstream news, as well as content that could be described as targeted towards racial groups?
Mm-hmm. I mean, in Canadian cities, you have the Sons of Odin walking around.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So this is something that's here now, and it's gonna get, I think, even harder to ignore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's only for the people who disagree with it, standing up against it, that it's gonna actually start losing traction.
Yeah. I mean, I've been somewhat heartened by the amount of protest in the States for both in the Women's March and for the travel ban.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because of the travel ban and because of the Uber CEO's position on an advisory council to Trump, you had people deleting Uber, and then the Uber CEO left the advisory council. I would say that all the backlash and protest to it was a large reason why 97 American countries spoke out against the Muslim travel ban and are fighting it in the courts.
97
companies.
Oh, companies.
Yeah, 97 countries. 97 companies are doing that. So we have to be fighting this now.
Yeah.
It's not something that I think is even political. It's just the decent thing to do. We need to be fighting it.
Yeah. So I think that kind of wraps up that and our thoughts about it. Hopefully, I'm really hoping that the news for the next few weeks will not focus on this, because this was a really heavy, dark episode. It's been 2 weeks, and then we come back and we're freaking goth or emo over here with our doom and gloom. But I really hope the news takes a turn, not just for our sanity's sake and for the hopefully health of our podcast, but also for the mere fact that it's troubling news, and hopefully it gets some resistance. But I think it's about time for something a little more uplifting, less political, well, depending on what your opinions of sports are, and altogether less interesting for me.
All right,
let's go. News that doesn't matter.
So the Super Bowl happened. They'd had the Atlanta Falcons versus the New England Patriots. Big amounts of drama because the New England Patriots had its star quarterback Tom Brady suspended for the first 4 games of the season.
Now people generally hate the Patriots, right? This is my read from by the way, I'm not a sports person at all, so I will be the everyman of everymen in this segment. But people hate the Patriots, right?
Yes, they've been good for a really long period of time, and that always breeds hate as well. They have been accused of cheating several times.
So they're kind of a heel.
Yes, to use the wrestling term, they are definitely a heel. So they were caught cheating by doing some stuff wrong around filming practices and such several years ago, and then recently there was the Deflategate scandal, which was one of the most ridiculous, drawn-out things where they were accused of deflating footballs in order to get an advantage. That dragged out for really long.
Well, the conclusion being...
The league still says that they did and suspended their star quarterback for games, but if you look at the actual facts of the case, their case is super shoddy. The gauges they used to show the football show different results.
Oh.
The footballs will naturally deflate due to cold weather and just naturally. It's just, it was such... So... That's the Patriots storyline coming in, and they were very much expected to make the Super Bowl. Atlanta was a bit more of an underdog, but that was kind of the thing going in. So people were expecting the Patriots to win, and win by a fair margin. Atlanta came out just firing, got a huge lead, up by like 25. Okay. And then the Patriots came roaring back. There was an unbelievable cast by Julian Edelman, where it got deflected up, and like, he caught it kind of over and around the defender. Yeah. It was ridiculous. They had to get a 2-point conversion to get into overtime, and then they won because the NFL has the weirdest overtime rules. Mm-hmm. If you get a touchdown on your first possession, you just win. There's no opportunity for the other team to...
When does the Exorcist come in, though?
What are you talking about?
Touchdown on your first possession. I don't know. I don't know sports.
That was terrible. So it was a very exciting game. Big comeback. Lady Gaga performed.
And Lady Gaga performed somewhat provocative.
You know, most people...
Given the climate.
It's funny, if you look on Twitter reaction, most people who are Trump-leaning praised Lady Gaga for an apolitical performance.
They didn't see it?
I don't know. Because she's saying, like, God bless America at the very beginning and didn't, like, get the, like, this land is our land, inclusiveness, whatever, and also never have listened to the lyrics of Born This Way.
Like, I thought it was very, very apropos that she's saying that. And
well, of course she was. It's one of her biggest hits.
Oh yeah, no. But I mean, like, given everything, she has a lot of big hits she could have sang. Let's be honest with it.
But that's one of her biggest.
Yeah.
Biggest. If you're gonna see a Lady Gaga performance, she's gonna do that. She's gonna do Bad Romance, and she's gonna do Poker Face.
Yeah.
Those are like the three you're gonna hear.
Yeah.
So it was.
We had the commercials. The commercials this year. I know of two of them. So there's the Coke commercial, which was beautifully heartfelt with the America.
You have a wonderful voice.
Oh, thank you. And it has that going in the background with all these different languages and people of different cultures, and saying that in the end that we're basically that this is all beautiful. We are all beautiful as like all Americans.
Yeah.
And the other one was, did you see the Cards Against Humanity one?
I did not, no.
It was 30 seconds of a potato that had advertisement written on it. And that was it.
Okay.
And then they wrote this giant blog post afterwards about, like, why we think our commercial failed. And so they were talking about it, and they were trying to be like, they're fake, right? The Cards Against Humanity were just trolling everybody.
Yeah.
But a whole bunch of people went on Twitter after were like, did I just watch 30 seconds of a potato? But, what happened is they were joking that we want to make this thing, like, speak, but we don't want to be so, like, upfront about it. So like, well, we'll choose this potato. But then they're like, but then somebody right before the shoot got worried that people would think it was part of the Super Bowl. So they wrote advertisement on the potato so people would know it was an advertisement. And then one person was like, but unfortunately, the biggest oversight is we forgot to mention our product at least once. So that probably was like one of the reasons we had $0 of return on our investment on the Super Bowl ad.
It's kind of the Cards Against Humanity brand. To do random stuff like that.
Yeah. You should just the reaction, it's kind of surreal to sit there. I didn't watch it during the Super Bowl, but afterwards and realize this is 30 seconds of a static shot of a potato with advertisement written on it.
Yeah, and the general tone of a lot of the ads directly, well, if not directly, but indirectly, spoke out against some of the intolerance we've been seeing. Yeah. You had an ad that was essentially a short film about a person trying to get to America from Mexico, and it was like A24 lumber or something. I don't even know what these people sell,
But America.
But America, yes. And they were like, watch the rest of the story on their website and the conclusion of this person's journey to America. Mm. I find it very interesting that corporate America has decided very much that the dollars and the money to be made is from not supporting Donald Trump at all.
Well, I'm guessing that the more wealthy urban class that would be spending on things like Starbucks and things like that are the people who, are not going to be supporting Donald Trump's practices.
It's true. It's true. Like I mentioned, 97 companies spoke out against the ban. These corporations aren't doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing this because
it's fiscally smart.
Exactly. A globalized world is what they make their money on.
Well, and I mean, when they start coming across as this lovey-dovey, it's the same reason why, Bell does Let's Talk and all that. I mean, it's a good idea. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, the mental health
awareness thing. But a lot of it is to get, like, Bell is right there in the name, and they're like, oh, Bell is caring about people. Like, If you get your company associated with that, that's very good.
Yeah, they make their money from a globalized world. Mm-hmm. So when you have they're very protectionist, very closed off, we're going to just wall off America. That's not good for business.
We're getting too political. What was the best play of the game?
The Julian Edmond catch. Yeah? I didn't catch the whole halftime show, but it was rather impressive, I thought. She was skydiving the things and on the rope and singing, and it was pretty cool. I don't know, I kind of like Lady Gaga sometimes.
Oh yeah, she's super talented. If you haven't seen, there's this early video of her singing Dia Maker by Led Zeppelin with her band before she was Lady Gaga. Girl's got pipes.
She's a very, very talented performer.
Yeah.
So I think a good choice for this type of venue, because you don't...
Oh, yeah.
For this type of performance, he needs to be a performer.
There was also the commercial with Weird Al.
What happened? I must have missed that.
You missed that commercial?
I did.
It was like this kind of like singing number where a bunch of people... I can't... It was like a SNL-y.
You're describing it so well.
I know. I just look it up. It was like this SNL-y thing. They had all these, not main, like, huge actors, but some, like, more well-known celebrities come in and kind of, like, sing out this whole song about, like, sports, and I don't know. I saw it once, okay?
So, to summarize that ad, Weird Al was in it.
Weird Al was in it.
A bunch of celebrities, but not very well-known celebrities, but somewhat well-known celebrities, sang a song about sports or something.
Like watching sports, and yeah.
Okay, what was the premise of the ad? Was
I can't remember. It was okay. It wasn't an ad so much as like an SNL skit kind of thing.
And what was it for?
Super Bowl.
Okay, and what was any memorable part of it?
Weird Al saying with a guy that looked like his dad.
Okay.
About sports. And then in the end, that one actor who's in a bunch of stuff had like a jersey on.
Wow. What we've just seen here, folks, is the worst description of anything.
Just look up the bloody thing.
That I have ever heard in my entire life. I think that is an appropriate place to end it. We have just wasted a couple minutes of your life talking about an ad or a skit. We're not even sure if it's an ad or not, but Weird Al's in it. So look that up. We've spent more time talking about it than was probably in it. Goodbye. good night. What do we do to finish this thing?
We'll just talk while it fades out. I guess that epitomizes news and it doesn't matter.
That's right. Goodbye. Have a great week. Fight Nazis. Bye.